The good old clap, take one.
That's right.
How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old? I did. I wanted to be a world champion.
Hey, is there honesty involved in this podcast? Can we be honest?
You can shut your lips.
And then I'll just say, put them up, what? Let's go.
He's like, you look too pretty on the wave. Get ugly.
We can talk about DMT if you want.
I thought you were boxing.
All right, the champ is here. We have reigning 8-time world champion Stephanie Gilmore back on the lineup. We're coming off the season opening back-to-back events in Hawaii, and we're catching her, I think, en route to Europe for the Mayo Rip Curl Pro Portugal. But Miss Gilmore, thank you so much for coming on the lineup today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's good to be back.
I was trying to remember the last time we talked. It was like end of 2009. I think we were figuring out what we were doing. I think we were in Hawaii. Maybe we both had respectively big nights, and it was an enjoyable conversation. But I remember thinking like, oh yeah, my head hurts after that. But where are you today? Are you not in Hawaii, but you're not in Europe? Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm on my way to Portugal. I kind of tried to stay in Hawaii as long as I could, knowing that we're heading to the cold. I saw a lot of people rush back to Australia and get some time at home, but I've always felt more comfortable just staying on the road. Like, I don't know, it seems harder to go home and you get a little taste of being at home, and then it's like you got to pack up and leave again. So I just prefer to just keep on trucking, and so I'm here in Los Angeles, and I guess to stop in and see my sister who lives here and see some of my good friends, and then head to Portugal on Friday.
That's interesting the way you put it. It reminds me of something that Stephen Belly told me years and years ago about Kelly. And I remember, I think we were in Jeffreys Bay, and I can't remember if the waves were good or bad or whatever, but as soon as the event was over, the entire tour left, and the waves were meant to be good for like another 4 weeks, and Kelly was just going to stay. And I remember Belly was talking to me about it, and he goes, can you believe that the best surfers in the world are not going to stay for like world-class waves at one of the world-class right-handers on the planet? They're all just running home in between events. And I go, that's why Kelly has won so much, is because he was comfortable kind of saying, you know, the road is my home, and I'm just here to figure out surfing. You know, is that something for you, just hearing you talk about it, that was always there for you, where you were like, oh yeah, no, look, like when I'm home, but when I'm on the road, I'm going to kind of try to avoid switching mindsets? Or is that something that you kind of came to through discovery?
Yeah, I think that I just fell in love with traveling from a young age. You know, like I have such a deep respect for Australia and where I live and where I grew up surfing, and it's given me so much, I don't know, from my skills in surfing. Like, it's taught me a lot about just, yeah, being a competitive athlete and surfing in such a crowded lineup. It's given me so much to take with me on the road. But there's something about being on the road that I just really enjoy, and knowing that home is always there. You know, it's not really going anywhere. Now we have such great technology where we can stay in touch with people on video. It's really good. Stay in touch with family and all that is really good. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely can relate to Kelly a bit in that respect, where I feel comfortable wherever I am. Like, I'm obviously in a very lucky position where I can afford to make myself very comfortable wherever I am. And I have my boyfriend on the road with me a lot of the time. And I think, this is my 17th year on tour. And so I have a lot of friends around the world, and I feel like wherever I stop, I can just, feel like I'm at home, and I know where to go surf. And I feel like you get to a point where you can drive around the streets without pulling up Google Maps.
Right.
And that's when you realize, oh, okay, this is a home to me. You know, I can find my way around. I know the restaurants that I like to eat at, and that's really when it starts to feel easy to just stay on the road and keep it going. And then when I do get home, I'm actually finding it easier to leave when I'm at home. So I'm enjoying just keeping it on the road for as long as I can.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, we'll get into it because I think, my time at the ASP and your time, it's sporting dominance have overlapped pretty closely. So, but the 17 years on the road, I mean, it's something that we see with both surfers sort of at the end of their career or just not being able to requalify, or even staff that kind of move on. It's tense, for people who have made the road their home for a good portion of their life, in a lot of our cases over half our lives. And it's almost like being reintroduced into sort of normal society, away from the circus. It's rough. And I think we've probably both seen people struggle with that. Is that something that's ever on your mind, in terms of, do you ever feel like you'll be able to reintegrate back into like, I'm going to stay in one space for, more than 6 months?
I get asked that a lot, like if you had to stop today, where are you going to live? Like what's that one place that really captures your heart that you would stay forever or raise children or whatever it is? And it's hard to go past Australia. We have a really great life, good surf, plenty of space and a really healthy lifestyle back there. But yeah, I don't know. I've always dreamed of just having a place in each stop, having a place to call home in each destination around the world. And these are all usually places where we have had contests in the past.
Right, yeah.
And to just kind of keep it rolling, I love spending that cyclone season, early part of the year in Australia. And then the wintertime in Australia is actually also it's great for surf. But, I'd love to take off to, California and Mexico and that kind of northern hemisphere part, and then to go to Europe in the October season is obviously the best part for that. So I kind of feel like I could see myself just bouncing around for a long time, but I'm sure I'll finish up in Australia.
Well, we're going to get into the goatness of it all, your historic 8th world title, where you're at these days in terms of, contentedness and hunger and legacy. But I thought the best thing to do would be to start talking about the present, currently sitting at 11th on the rankings, one spot below the relegation line, coming out of the Hawaiian leg of the 2023 Championship Tour. We got a 17th at Pipe, a 5th at Sunset Beach. We're sitting in Los Angeles en route to Europe. Where are you at kind of psychologically with how the opening 2 events went and how you're looking at Super Tubos in Portugal?
Yeah, I think I'm just always reflecting on last year. I had such a bad start to the year last year. I think I was sitting in a worse position this time last year than what I am now. So I can kind of have that in my back pocket as like, it's okay, if you're not making the cut right now, but we've got 3 events. Last year I got my, one of my best results was in Portugal. So, I had that equal 3rd place there. I lost to Lakey in the semis, but it was just that confidence booster that I needed to go into the Australian leg and just kind of keep pushing to get better. It feels funny, like it's definitely, I've had some thoughts about like, oh, that would look really bad if you won an 8th title and then didn't make the cut the next year. That would look really bad. But at the end of the day, that's just like my ego that would be hurt the most. So it's sort of just thinking about like how that would look, how that would feel, accepting it, which I had last year. I kind of accepted it too, but at the same time, I just wanted to keep pushing through and be like, hey, you still have a chance. So push as hard as you can and get a great result and, see what the year how it will unfold. But I don't know, I enjoy it. I still love competing. There's something really awesome now that we have these 5 young women that have come on tour and these rookies who are just insanely talented, and they just get me so excited to want to surf better. And I love that feeling. I really, yes, I've won 8 world titles, but I just feel like there's so much more to learn, and I know I've got a lot of weaknesses, and I don't know, as a competitive person, that's just something that I'm always thinking about and how I can get better. And so, yeah, I'll head to Portugal and see what happens.
I mean, it's like kind of the secondary, maybe unintended consequence of the redesign of the tours and competition framework. With the mid-season relegation, most people are probably thinking, well, the first 5 events are about survival, but probably something that you've experienced maybe more so than anyone else, but certainly you or Carissa, where it's like, well, the other part of it is if you don't have a great start to the season, you have to kind of keep these two spaces in your head of, I'm the reigning world champ, and oh, geez, I might not even get a full year on tour. And as you pointed out, like, it sounds like you're approaching that tension through, the lens of okay, well, that's just my ego talking. And that feels like a pretty intentional way to kind of combat it for you, where you're like, all my surfing's there. Like, I know how to win these events, even against whatever generation we're up against right now. Like, still strong enough to win at any of these spots on tour. But if I let that ego part of me kind of inspire fear, then that's probably where I'm going to get distracted enough to where something's not going to work out.
Exactly. And it's just sort of understanding that ego's there, and it could be a distraction for the worse, or it could push me to be better and to be able to get those results that I need. You really have to look at those fears and whatnot as a tool to be able to push through and get better. But yeah, it's a funny space to be in, because exactly, you're dealing with like, oh, it's a survival thing, but at the same time, yeah, it's like, well, it's like a legacy thing. Is this going to damage my legacy if I don't make the cut? Right. It could, in my mind, but at the same time, I also I have no, I don't know, that's not a fear of mine, like the surfing on tour is so good, and there's only 10 women that make the cut, and that's such a small number, and everyone is surfing so great, and I don't know, it wouldn't be the end for me, It's just
no, of course not.
Just an extra little part of the story, but I can still make the cut. So we're talking we're having a really sad conversation right now. That's something that hasn't even happened, but
of course, yeah. Well, and I think too, it's and this is maybe one of those, I wouldn't say unintended consequences. I think people knew it was going to be like an impactful kind of like 5-event sprint. So much can change event to event. You can go from like, well, I was beneath the cut line and now I'm pretty much locked in with one result, or vice versa, right? Where you're like, I think I'm pretty safe. And then, a couple things happen and you're like, oh man, that didn't work out at all. And I mean, as far as we were talking about the weather kind of before we started recording, and I do have a theory, and I'm going to get my surf line has been confusing me agenda off once again on this podcast, but I do think La Nina has just thrown like such a spanner into wave conditions everywhere. And we had some magic days across both, Pipeline and Sunset Beach, but pretty tricky forecasts in a lot of ways. And not that you would ever be someone that's like, well, if we had proper waves, it would have been different. But that does kind of play a role in the randomness of the results. Would you not agree?
Definitely. And I've always been one to take my losses on myself. I'm not one to really blame my coach or my boards or anything. You won't usually see me run up the stairs, punch a bunch of holes in my boards after I lost, because it's probably a good board. That's why I was riding in the first place. But I think that, yeah, you have to appreciate that in surfing, we are dealing with the ocean. We're dealing with something that's completely out of our control. And no matter how much training mentally and physically that you do, you're always going to have that one element that is just, it's always the wild card, and you don't know what you're going to get. That's kind of why we love it so much as well. And that's what I enjoy so much about the event like Sunset, because when it is pumping, you always get these surprising results of, especially in the men's, you see these athletes come through that you're like, whoa, Barron, who's this Barron kid? And here he wins the event as a wild card. Or, to have like Gabby Bryant, she's so strong out there, and you're looking at these new athletes that really, you can't put your money on John or Gabby or any of these guys, because you just don't know what you're going to get. And I think that's why that event is awesome. And then when it's small, it's even more of a random wild card. But yeah, tough to surf. So it's just, I don't know, it all adds up to why surfing is unique, and it's one of the sports that just keeps the athletes continually evolving, and you just have to learn so much about the ocean. And I think that's why I'm still here anyway.
You've mentioned that you're in LA, and LA does seem like one of those locations that's become one of your probably many second homes over the last few years. Not quite as renowned globally for world-class surf as perhaps, Snapper Rocks or Duranbah would be. But when you are in LA, like on a stopover like this, do you worry about like, oh, I need to get waves or I need to go training? Or is it just a different kind of, for a few days, is it just a different routine for you that kind of breaks you out of where you've been?
I like to, mix it up and just kind of, I don't know, have a little break in between. Like I'm not afraid to take a couple of days off where I'm just cruising and, I don't know, eating at good restaurants and just taking that time to sort of switch off from being in a place like Hawaii where it feels like, I mean, we were there for a month and a half and Hawaii has a different feeling where it's very relaxing and it's this beautiful tropical island with great surf, but it's also very intense. And it feels like for that entire month and a half, like you're listening to the ocean and you're feeling like intimidated by the crowds and the waves. And it's quite draining on the energy system because you're just always like wondering what the comp's going to be like and what the conditions will be like. And so it's pretty intense like that. But I'm here just to relax. I'll do a bit of training, like gym work stuff, but the surfing is, I'm not too fussed if I'm not in the water, especially here. It's like, it's been raining, so the water's actually really gross.
Yeah,
I don't really want to get like some bacterial infection before I fly to Portugal. But I think it's okay. I trust my surfing and I know that if I'm keeping my body physically fit outside of the ocean, then I can show up and jump on a board. And also I credit to my shaper, Darren Hanley. I have some great boards with me, and also my coach Tom is picking up some new boards in Australia and he will bring them over. And I think that I just have had such a great relationship with Darren where I can jump on a brand new board and I know exactly how it'll feel or what fins I need to swap to if it's, needs a little something different. And that's, that's the beauty of having that really strong relationship with Darren.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, so this comes up on the podcast from time to time when I'm wrestling with my own personal biases and discussing things. But we talked about it before the break. You and I have known each other for a while. I started with the then ASP in late 2005, started on the North American Tour in 2006, and then started covering international events not long after. Your rookie season was 2007. You won the world title that year, an achievement I had a relative front row seat for. And I guess, and again, this goes to the personal biases thing, but I also think my personal biases are objectively right, which is I've been of the opinion that year in and year out for the past decade and a half, you are one of, if not the favorite at each event, and also for the world title every season. And fortunately for me, you've proven me right quite a lot. But maybe no more so than when you claimed your historic 8th world title last September, where you battled through the entire field of the Rip Curl WSL finals to do so. It's been a few months since that moment. Where is your head at in terms of what happened on that day and where, this 8th world title kind of sits with you in the sort of the pantheon of your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, I feel like I'm still relishing in the glory of that moment in September last year, and that's possibly why my first 2 events didn't really work out as well as I'd hoped.
Right, sure, yeah.
I'm still drinking champagne for breakfast. No, I'm not. But, I don't know. It's so fascinating how, as an athlete, you have these goals and you set out on these adventures throughout the year to try and achieve these moments. And, I don't know. I think having been sitting on 7 world titles, like I was reflecting on winning my 7th world title and how great a moment that was to equal Lane Beachley as the most. And I remember thinking that this feels great, but I could already sense this pressure of like, will I make it to number 8? Is it possible to get to number 8? I'm sitting there. I won the title, but I didn't win the event that year. Carissa won the event at Honolulu Bay. And and I remember thinking, oh man, like these girls are so good, and Carissa's already at 3 world titles, or maybe she had 4 by then, but it just seemed like it was slowly, to reach 7 was a monumental moment, but it was also like, felt like the 8th was just slipping out of my reach. And I was, I guess, thinking more about, did I still have that desire in me to apply myself in such a way to be able to do it? Like knowing that an entire year, like you really have to commit to an entire year and stay consistent the entire year to come out with the world title. Did I have that fuel in the tank to be able to do it? And and then when the format changed, I didn't like it, to be honest. I was like, okay, I understand the whole like final event for the fans, for the advertising, for the WSL business. It's an amazing way to be able to capitalize on the advertising and marketing and all this sort of stuff, to be able to just say to the fans, hey, on Saturday at 8 a.m. we are going to start this finals day and we'll crown world champions by the end of the day. I was thinking about how surfing is still, I would say the biggest thing that lets professional surfing down is the fact that we don't know when the contest will run. Even if the forecast is pumping, you wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, it's not as good as we thought, or tomorrow looks like it's going to be better.
Right.
We're not going to run today. You're probably going to lose fans. You're going to lose traction. That's just, that's the nature of surfing. And anyway, so I, obviously had to come to accept the new format. And as time went on, I started to think, I don't know, I just kind of thought, maybe it cheapens the world champion. Like to just say you can win it in one event, I don't know, that just doesn't sit right with me. Like Carissa's just dominated a whole year. And the first year, she won the world title. And then when it came around to for me to get another shot at it, because I had a shocker in the first finals, I was like, okay, maybe this is the only way you can win another world title. Because I'm not sure if I could, really stay consistently at the top, beating these girls the entire year. Like if I can sneak into the finals and then just have a hell of a day, then I could probably make it happen. And I started to think this is probably the only way I could win another world title. So that happened. I felt like I was just peering over the edge of the cut every time, like, oh, I could just make it in. Okay, I just made the first cut. That was crazy, but here I am. I get to Tahiti. I'm like, well, this is event. You want to bet against me every time here in Tahiti. This is not my strength at all. But I just made the cut again. So I snuck into the final 5. And I remember thinking, okay, well, here, if anything, you just get another shot to do better than what you did last year, because I probably thought about how poorly I performed in the finals the first time around for the entire year after it. I was like going, oh my God, that was so embarrassing. Didn't even make one heat. I just was underprepared. Like, I can't believe I had such a great opportunity and I didn't rise to the occasion. And so, if anything, I was like, okay, you got another shot. The universe works in great ways where, if you really want something and you get that opportunity again, then really do what you can, do what you will with it. But this time around, it was like, learn from your mistakes and try again. So, showing up to the final day again. I mean, I had a really good block here in LA with a friend of mine. We trained super hard and really dialed in the nutrition, and I just committed to the challenge early. It wasn't like show up a few days before and see what happened. It was like I really committed to it early, and I don't know, I wasn't like, I was okay with whatever the result would be. I kind of was okay with the fact that Carissa would have 6 world titles by the end of it.
Right.
I was thinking 6 world titles is huge. That's right there. She's only 1 more away from me. Like, okay, I feel like I know deep down that Carissa will go on a tear and she'll probably win more than anyone for the women. But I felt like I had this desire to get to 8 first. If I could get there first, then whatever happens after that, I don't care. So So yeah, we get to the finals, we get to lower trestles, and I just was, I don't know, I really, even when I was doing my interviews with Make or Break and I was doing my interviews with people leading into the event, it was kind of like no one even thought about me because my poor performance the year before, I was coming in at 5th. I was like this, I don't know, everyone was like, oh, it's definitely the Tatiana, Carissa, Joanne, and Brisa. A lot of the focus was on them. I was kind of like, oh, I'm there, and yes, maybe I'll make a heat, but I wouldn't focus on me. And so I feel like the pressure was off in that sense. And this time around, I just had different intentions, you know. I was like, hey, why not try and go the whole way?
It's interesting too. I'm glad you brought up the focus thing from Make or Break, but really you could probably say the entire surfing world has that preoccupation with like, all right, that person's achieved something, who's next, you know? Right. And that kind of goes back to my point on my own personal biases, but also them being somewhat objectively right in the sense that I feel like the surfing industrial complex works very hard to move people on as fast as possible, right? And so for someone like yourself who's achieved so much, you've probably felt a version of that from whether it's the media or the sponsors or the whatever, just the way people talk about surfing in the sense of like, all right, she's had her time, who's next? And the reality is, and I kind of say this as objectively as possible, like your surfing at pretty much every stop to this day is still in the favorite space, and for the world title as well, even if the narrative is trying to shift on, right? And it's interesting to hear you talk about the way you approached last season's event, because you're like, well, I did have to perform throughout the entire year. I had to perform at places like Tahiti to join this group to have a shot at the world title. I'm somewhat flying under the radar, even though I'm a 7-time world champion. And it just showed, really. Like, I mean, I could, like, you pulling these reverses that I've seen you try in competition forever, usually kind of on like throwaway heats and stuff, but just nailing them. And I think, and it did feel like once you got through that first heat, the floodgates kind of opened for you in terms of performance. And I think the entire field on the women's side was sort of terrified just watching you come through. But you've said that you're still very competitive, but in terms of your ability to perform and just your surfing ability at such a high level, are there spots on tour in 2023 where you don't consider yourself at least an odds-on favorite to win the event?
Oh, definitely. I mean,
like where?
I mean, Pipeline, I don't know. It depends on what the conditions are like, but Pipe, I mean, even Sunset, I've won out there, but I'm really not confident at Sunset.
What about like lower trestles, for example? You're
Portugal,
surfing at lower trestles.
Okay, lower trestles for sure. Like, and I have said to myself a few times, like, hey, if you can get into the final 5 while the finals are at lower trestles, you've got a shot at the world title for sure. I've won that event when it was just an event in the past, and I always looked forward to lower trestles. And that's something that, you know, I'm always trying to work on, is to find, like, when I'm at a wave where I'm completely comfortable with what the wave's like, I know I can pick the eyes out of the lineup. I can find waves, you know, I can, without priority, I can take off on a wave that to my opponent might only look like a 5, but I can turn it into a 7-5. I have confidence at a wave like trestles to do that, but in other places I don't, and that's because I haven't put in the time. You know, I'll just do the bare minimum of what I have to do at that wave to maybe make a few heats, but I'm really not applying myself. And that was one of my goals this year. It was like, hey, you got to step outside your comfort zone in places like Tahiti and in places like Pipeline, and just kind of, you know, that's what sport is. That's what life is about. It's about pushing yourself into these new realms and challenging yourself and learning new things about what you can do, how far you can go, what you can achieve, and where you'll fail, because that's where you learn the most. So, yeah, I think going into trestles, I had that confidence. Like, if the waves are good, if the water's warm. Okay, the first year the water at lowers was freezing, and I was first heat of the morning. My feet were numb. I was like pissed off at the whole thing. I was like, this sucks. It's cold. You know, my frame of mind was just shocking. The surf was so crowded leading into it. I couldn't catch waves. I was like battling 12-year-olds to try and practice for the finals. And I was like, this whole thing is just, frustrating me. So then I get to this second time around and I was like, I just need to change the way I'm looking at this whole picture. So, and it changed my free surfs. It changed everything. I was paddling out there with strong intentions. Like I wanted to have a bigger presence in the free surfs. I think there was at one point, it was 2 days before the finals. And it might've been the first moment that I got in Carissa's head, because I'd actually paddled around her, maybe a little more sneaky, but I paddled around her and she didn't notice. Maybe she thought I was going to go left, but I took off on a wave and she dropped in on me. And then she did a big turn and I was coming up behind her in a bottom turn and I went up to hit the lip and she was like, oh, she didn't see me. And I was like, keep going. And then she kicked out. And it was such a small moment, and maybe Carissa didn't even think anything of it. But in my mind, I was like, oh, cool. That's one that I'm already kind of in her head.
Got her. Yeah. Right.
And I also think Carissa wasn't even thinking of me at that point. I really wasn't even someone that she would consider of meeting in the final event. So, but for me, that was a good tick. Like, cool. We're gonna start strong here. And I was taking waves in the lineup off the guys. I was battling crew and just saying I want this. I want to be here. I want to have presence in the free surf. So when I show up at the finals, everyone knows I want to be a part of this. And then for the finals day, it was just okay, the first heat, I was repeating everything that I did the year before, having an absolute shocker. I was looking at Brisa thinking, Brisa, this is your first time in the finals. You're supposed to be nervous and falling off and doing weird things. Not me. It should be the other way around. And Brisa was just so cool, calm and collected. And it was like she was, doing it for her third or fourth time. And I just thought, okay, this is a shocker. But that was the turning point. And the last minute when I needed a wave, if I just knew, I went back into a mode that I could turn on so easily when I was a rookie or when I was a kid. I loved winning so much. I loved the game of okay, push him into a wave to get priority back and then try and find something that you can get a score on. And I don't know, I just love those little games that we play while we're competing.
I'm glad you brought that part up too, because that's something that I'm sort of endlessly fascinated about with surfing, and particularly with someone like you. And remember Andy Irons said this years ago. He said, everyone wants you to win your first world title. And then the second you win, you've got a target on your back, even by people that wanted you to win that first one. And it does feel like there is a stark difference psychologically between being an up and coming insurgent force, and then being the establishment, right? And you've obviously played both. You were coming up at a time when Chelsea Georgeson and Sophia Milanovic and Lane Beachley were so dominant, but you were able to not only kind of have this step increase in terms of ability and talent performance, but you probably also benefited from hey, I'm new on the block and there's no expectations on me compared to that establishment class. And it probably feels wildly different once you've won a few world titles and everyone's talking about who's next. Is that something that you've been really sort of aware of throughout your career?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because I was thinking about how much hype there is around Katie Simmers, and
sure.
And I was thinking about how, she's an excellent surfer, and I've spent a little bit of time with her recently, and she's cool as hell. And I think that cool as hell, that doesn't make sense. Cool as cool as cool.
It depends, right?
But I was thinking about how when I came on as a rookie, I was sort of in my own, there was Jessie Molly Dyer and she came on the tour before me, but of the girls of my age who were really trying, making heats and getting good results, it was just me. And that was for a few years until the Carissas and Sally's and all those girls came along. And but I was thinking about how for someone like Katie, who is a phenomenal surfer, she's coming in with a whole group of women like Molly Picklum and Betty Lou, and all of them are so good that I felt in my time when I came on tour, it was an easy one to be oh, Steph's Steph's going to come out guns blazing. She's probably going to be one of the best.
Right.
And probably, I mean, to win a world title in the first year, yeah, that's crazy cool. But to think about Katie coming on and she's actually going to be dealing with the Mollys and the Betty Lou's who are so good that they'll probably, you know, all 3-4 of them are going to be battling so hard for this hype, for this limelight that I didn't have to deal with that. It was weird. It was kind of like it was just a solo show for me, but you know, to see these young girls come through and I think like Molly is just such a strong surfer that she's going to be wanting it even more than the other girls. And it's, I don't know, it's interesting to just to think about how times have changed and how I was in a, you know, timing is everything for me. I think I had a lot of success purely because of, I came in right between the generational shift and it was like just a real moment where I could make my mark and yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's something in that too that obviously it parallels Kelly too, right? And despite Kelly's sort of make or break soundbite of winning the world title his rookie year, I don't think that's factually correct, but we'll let him have it. But the idea that, you know, he qualified ahead of his sort of generational contemporaries, right? And kind of had success. And then once, you know, his sort of the people in his age bracket kind of qualified, he already had all this momentum. So he defeated, you know, the generation ahead of him. He defeated his own generation, then had to reinvent for the ones that have kind of come out in that way. And he's done so in sort of wild, wild ways. Do you feel like with your own surfing, you actually spoke pretty humbly about where you have gaps that can be improved upon? What are kind of the key things that you think you've had to work on or improve in the last few years to get back to, you know, a world champion status?
I think, I mean, the main thing is heavy waves, number one. Like for the most part of my career, we had the women's tour in conditions, like we were actually at separate locations to the men. You know, one year we finished our tour in Huntington Beach in the middle of the year. So, you know, we were always finished at Honolulu Bay, which Honolulu, when it's big, is a heavy wave, but it's not a pipeline and it's not a Tahiti. And so I never had to compete at these locations. And I'd say that's why I never really pushed myself to go there and surf them. Like I was so consumed by what it takes to win a world title and focusing on those events and those types of waves that I really didn't push myself outside of that zone to learn anything new. Or I don't know, I almost feel like I'm not a real surfer because I wasn't interested in like chasing a swell to Chopu, because I was more interested in being like, hey, my next contest is at Snapper Rocks. Why am I going to go charge some big left and risk getting injured to show up or miss the next event? So I think that maybe my actual surfing was let down a lot because I wasn't, you know, pushing myself to learn these other waves. And now that we have these waves on tour, yeah, I feel like I'm fully a Grom that has no idea what I'm doing out there. But at the same time, it's a really lovely feeling to know that I'm showing up to these events as a world champion, but feeling like, whoa, this is new to me. This gets me excited because I need to learn more. I need to figure out how I can be better and put my time in, and that, if anything, will extend my career for another 5 to 10 years. You know, it's a great feeling.
Right. And that's, I'm glad you brought that up too, because, you know, on the topic of front row seats, like you've had front row seats to at least 3 multi-time world champions. You know, Lane Beachley, who you were close with when you came on tour, and she'd been on tour for a while. Actually, maybe 4. And then, you know, Mick Fanning, who's sort of a Gold Coast contemporary of you, who won 3 and has retired. Lisa Anderson and Kelly Slater. Lisa's got 4 world titles. You know, Kelly's got his 11. They're, you know, Roxy Quicksilver team members with you. And when you, in your experience with these 4 different people, are there things about their final chapters of their competitive career and then kind of post-competitive careers that you've noticed or taken or tried to start working on for yourself? And I'm not saying you're anywhere near retiring from competition full time, but you know what I mean, where it's like not every surfer that falls off tour, not every world champion that decides to hang it up has immediate success off tour. And I'm wondering if that's something that you've thought about, you know, knowing your relationships with these people.
Yeah, I think the main thing is sort of setting yourself up financially to know that, you know, you don't have to fall back on working a 9-to-5 job or, you know, an office job or something to sustain an income. But yeah, that's always something that I'm so lucky. I have great guidance in my parents and the people around me who have always, you know, helped me to stay. And I don't know, I'm not a very flashy person, so I wouldn't say I'm like wasting money on race cars and stuff, but but
Not
I
yet.
yeah. But I really admired how much Lane was so business minded. You know, she towards the end of her career, when she stopped working with Billabong and different companies, her sponsorships, she was by no means did she want to stop. You know, she was like, I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to create a brand for myself outside of surfing. I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to tell my story. I want to improve other people's lives and giving back in a way that was much more than just like, you know, starting a surf school or something. She was like, I want to do this on a grand scale. And I think she's doing really well with that. And I see someone like Mick, who's also, you know, he's an incredible businessman. He's got his fingers in all kinds of different little projects here and there. And people love Mick Fanning. You know, I think his legacy is what is so special because he's able to pick and choose the things that he wants to work with, and then they'll be successful no matter what, just because of the fact that he's a quality human being who, you know, people really admire his work ethic and what he does. So the way I think about it is how I carry myself in and around these events and these world titles now will carry over into my career post surfing. You know, it's if people can really get a gauge on my character and whether they like me or not, then I think they'll, you know, that'll make a big decision in whether, you know, people want to associate me or brands want to associate with me post my professional career. But yeah, I'm really lucky. You know, I love working with Roxy and I love working with my current sponsors to do fun projects. And I see somebody like Lisa who continually has a relationship with Roxy and yeah, to be able to continue that is really cool. And it definitely, I mean, what a wonderful life to be able to continue being supported by a surf company who just lets you go surfing.
You know, it's such a good point you bring up just on, I mean, so much has changed just in terms of like athlete sponsorship, right? And as someone who's gotten to observe you throughout your career, it does seem like the more you've achieved, the elevated realms you've kind of occupied, you've been able to have kind of a balance of the agenda of the brands that maybe when you were younger wanted to dictate how you were represented versus you having kind of more agency and kind of collaborating with a lot of these brands in terms of what stories you're telling and how you're presenting yourself in a more authentic way. Is that fair? Like if you kind of look over the course of your career?
Oh, totally. I think when, you know, from the age of 12 until I'd say, you know, my early 20s, I was so focused on perfecting my craft of surfing that I really didn't even think twice about how I looked off a surfboard. You know, I didn't care what I was wearing or, you know, how I was talking or anything. It was just like surf, 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 surf. And then after I, you know, was winning world titles, and then you start to see yourself in the media, you start to see how you look, you start to hear yourself in interviews and you're like, whoa, hang on a second, that sounded terrible. That looks horrific. We need to change some stuff here. And I also, I felt like it's stressful. Like as a young woman to, you know, think that you need to look beautiful and speak perfectly and, you know, uphold this image of like that stereotypical beach girl that's like sexy and cool, but also ripped on a surfboard. I definitely felt a bit of pressure there. not so much from my sponsors, but definitely from just the world of, you know, being in media and
society,
and
right?
Society,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was when I actually employed my older sister, Whitney, to come on as like a stylist. And I just have to give her so much credit for helping me shape my entire style off the surfboard. Like my whole brand, everything was really because Whitney had a vision for how it could look. And that's because both of us were really big fans of the women in sport that could cross over into both worlds, like the Maria Sharapovas. You know, she was a tennis champion, but she was also so well respected in the fashion world, and she was invited to all the who's who of, you know, the world of fun and parties and just the social life that, you know, it's extra work, but it elevates your brand in a way that makes you more enticing for companies to want to work with. So that is a whole nother world and a whole nother part of being a professional athlete that I think a lot of people, they either love it or hate it, and they can embrace it and, you know, use it to their advantage, or they can just kind of be overwhelmed by it and not even want to go there. And for me, I was lucky that I could just focus on my surfing, and I could let my sister Whitney really decide, okay, you know, every photo shoot I was doing or whatever, Whitney would come and or she'd go over the whole wardrobe, how it's going to look, even down to like the makeup artist is putting makeup on me, and my sister was like, no eyeliner, no this, no that. We want natural.
Right.
We want Steph to be as authentic and, you know, just as naturally beautiful as she is. And that really opened my mind up to the fact that when you are genuine and honest, then people love it. People resonate with it. And that to me was the easiest way to do it, because I was like, oh, okay, sweet. I just have to be myself, but also, yeah, be aware of you know, how you can tell your story the way you want to and curate your brand. But yeah, I was lucky that I could work with Whitney, and we did it in, I think, a really nice way to then help the brands that I'm working with make both of our, you know, the advertising or whatever it is that we're doing, make it look cool and genuine. So
it's really interesting to hear you talk about that, because obviously there's been a double standard like in surfing, but probably most like men's and women's marketing, but particularly in surfing, since we're going to speak about what we know about. You could argue that some of the highest paid male surfers on the planet are not what, you know, the consensus population would deem traditionally attractive. But it almost never really mattered. Whereas we went through a period in the surfing world with women surfing where the part about how well they surfed or not was sort of secondary to the way they were positioned, or sort of hypersexualized. And I feel like so much nuance gets lost in that, because it's either like, that's really bad, or that's really good, or that's what makes sense, etc. And to hear you talk about working with your sister on sort of like executing or exercising the agency that you have to say, this is how I want to be positioned, this is how I want to look, etc. If you didn't have that, it's safe to say that the industry would have done that for you, and maybe in a way that wasn't authentic to who you really are.
Totally. And one of the greatest things I was ever taught was, don't be afraid to say no. Like if you're not comfortable with something, if it doesn't align with your values, or who, you know, even if they are offering a lot of money, you know, it's like, does that really align with who you are and what story you want to tell? It's important to ask yourself those questions before you say yes to anything. So, and knowing that fairly early on in my career, then I think that really helped both of us navigate, you know, the companies that I worked with, the brands that I really felt I could align with genuinely, and I was able to sort of draw a line in where I felt like, you know, I didn't have to over-sexualize my image or anything. Like, yes, there's definitely a lot of photo shoots and stuff that I've done where I was like, oh, I look back and go, oh, that's terrible. But at the same time, it helped me to learn what I like and what I don't like about myself. And sure, I wish I could go back online and delete a few things, like a few photos that I wish, you know, just didn't exist. But at the same time, it's just funny, if you can't laugh about yourself and things you've done in the past, then, I think we're taking ourselves too seriously.
Sure. Well, if you figure out how to go and delete photos of yourself off the internet, I think I have like 0.001% of the amount that you do, but mine are not that great. So I'm happy to take you up on it.
Okay, one of the most, the things that I'm really proud of is that I feel like I've been able to have a balance between like being a competitive athlete and being a female in surfing, where it's sort of like a lot of people say to me, oh my God, I just love your style. And then I have a lot of people that say to me, I love that you just surf in board shorts. Like, I love that you don't feel this need to, to surf in tiny little bits of lycra, that, surely are uncomfortable to surf in. But yes, I can see that young girls feel pressure from social media and whatnot to kind of live up to whatever this standard is. But I just hope that through my actions, I'm able to sort of say to them, hey, freak what you feel. Like, if you really love what you're wearing and how you're doing it, then go for it. But also know that, you want to be comfortable. You want to be able to perform the best way that you can. And if that means wearing a full suit in the middle of summer, then do that. Like, to me, it's been about the surfing. If I can really focus on that, then that's first and foremost. And to find a balance between the two where I can be like, just have a nice aesthetic in both of those realms. And it's been important to me.
And I think kind of to what you're talking about before, like even beyond your full-time competitive, how do I put it? The expression of you as a full-time competitor, it seems like a lot of the brands that you're working with today, as you pointed out, are actually working with you because of who you are, inside and outside the jersey. I mean, you're Roxy, you mentioned your shaper DH, it's a longtime partner. But, groups like Audi and even Yeti, it seems like Yeti's sort of partnership with you, which you're now an ambassador for, has to do really with who you are and your love of maybe getting outside of the jersey as well. How did that partnership kind of come together?
Yeah, Yeti approached me through a friend of ours, Glenn Casey in Australia, and he wanted to bring a woman onto the team and a surfer. And I guess, I mean, I've always loved Yeti products. Who doesn't love Yeti products? Like,
what's your go-to like day to day?
My day to day, I use the Yonder. I'm drinking out of it right now. I actually love the Yonder because I don't like cold water. So the insulated ones, they're great. The best thing about the insulated ones is that you can actually fill them with hot water when you're in California, and after you surf, you get a hot shower. But I love these because they're clear, so I can see how much I've drunk and how much more I've got to drink. So that's pretty cool. But I mean, yeah, all the products. The best one is actually the is it like 350 liters of? It's
the big cooler thing.
An ice bath. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're rad. But I've always wanted to align myself with brands that I feel obviously are of top quality. I really love their storytelling in their products and their advertising. Like I love that they work with John and Mick Fanning and their team of athletes and adventurers, and it's not just surfers, it's not just campers. It's a bit of everything. And I did a trip with them recently I was actually, after the finals last year, I flew up to Vancouver and we did a fun surf trip, myself, Mark Healy and Keith Malloy. And it was just awesome because it was all about like hunting and adventuring to these places where you don't usually go. And it's like the surfing is just a small part of what the whole trip is about. And that's actually where I get the most reward for what I do, because I sit back and I go, wow, I just won an 8th world title and it was like madness at the beach and super cool. But here I am, this is where I'm refueling my tank. This is where I feel like I'm actually getting back to the spirit of surfing, which to me is adventure. It's looking for new waves, it's surfing new places, it's meeting new people who you feel like you've been friends with forever. And And I think that Yeti does such a good job through their storytelling, and we're dragging these products through all of the different elements, and they're withstanding all the pressure. So it's I really enjoy working with them, and it's really cool that they've come on board as a partner with WSL. It's that's a great partnership, and I think all the surfers are very happy walking around with all their new Yeti gear.
You can tell which are the best partnerships because it's the people that don't actually get paid by the partner using the stuff. They're like, oh, this is great. I'll use the thing. And it's cool. Like I like the way you position that too, in the sense of, most people that win a world championship or world title or whatever sport, the first thing they probably do is, aside from the I'm going to Disneyland, is probably not, I'm going off grid in the backcountry of Vancouver to recharge, And I feel like that's just, it's a cool look into what actually keeps you going, at after so much achievement in your career, where you're like, no, I could do the party, we could do a media tour, whatever it is, but there's always time for that. And it's I kind of need to, I need to tap out and kind of tap into something different for a change.
Yeah, and I think it really makes you appreciate those competitive moments more, because it seems like there's so much build up to it, and then these great moments happen, and then it's it's gone. So you can't really hang on to it. You have to let go of it and then move forward and go, okay, what makes me feel good now? What am I going to be searching for next? And it's a new adventure. Right. It's thinking about, I don't know, going into the wilderness makes you really think bigger picture. Okay, yeah, I won a trophy, but what is it that I can do with it? Is winning that trophy gonna help the planet? Is it going to help the overlogging in Vancouver Island? I don't know. There's kind of it makes you ask yourself these questions that are really important in terms of just more than competitive surfing. It's things that are bigger than you and your little world, and it's really crucial.
Well said. We're going to get to a couple more topics, but we're going to take one more break, and we will be right back. So just before we went to break, you were talking about a little bit about what continues to fuel you, and you hear so often, and you experience so often with people at the very top of their respective disciplines, whether it's sports or arts or whatever, they often say things like, I reached the top of the mountain, I won the Super Bowl, or I won the Masters, or I won a Grammy, and it didn't change my life the way I thought it was, mostly from a psychological ego. There was a hole that I thought this was going to fill, and it didn't. And so much of human performance, sadly, in a lot of ways, is often driven from, places of challenge, whether you're sad or you're angry or you're impoverished. That is sort of the catalyzing force behind someone getting very good at a certain thing and achieving something. Throughout your career, did you feel like achieving what you've achieved and performing at the level you performed at for so long was there to kind of fix something in you, or was it driven for you from a different place?
It was driven from a different place. I would say that I don't know, I just always had this feeling of wanting to be the best at something, wanting to perform great. And it really, looking back on it, it's just ego. The idea that I could perform something and get a crowd of people around me clapping and being like, yeah, you're amazing. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a human condition for sure.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that, like you said, it's important for human beings to be challenged and to push themselves to be working on things. I guess nowadays, because we don't have to work for our food, as we're not out hunting and gathering and doing those things, we have to sort of find ways to make ourselves feel somewhat of a purpose, or just to be. I think it's important to be working on things. It makes you fulfilled in your day to day, and that can be anything. That can be helping other people. It can be starting a company. It can be learning a new song, or on the guitar. It comes in many different shapes and sizes, but for me, I just purely loved the challenge of trying to win a contest and then making it to the top and holding up a trophy and being like, you're the best is cool. But I also was so, I was able to like let go of it really easily. And I think that's the hardest part for people. They like build you up. This is how you win, but no one really teaches you what happens after that. So for me, I just found it really easy to detach from the wins as easy as the losses and sort of be like, okay, well, I won, but time continually just keeps rolling. And what's next? And to be honest, as soon as I won the world title at Trestles last year, I remember having the trophy in my hands and like high-fiving people and getting all of these great feelings, but I was flashing back to the moments throughout the year that I was disappointed in myself. I kept flashing back to, you know, my poor performances and different stops on the tour where I was thinking that wasn't good enough. That wasn't world champion quality. Like, I guess I'm just hard on myself in those ways, and it's not a bad thing because it made me think, okay, well, I've got work to do. That's where I need to get better.
Totally. And it sounds like there's a healthy way to do that, and there's obviously an unhealthy way to do it. And you know, a few weeks ago, Shane Dorian was on the podcast, and he and I were talking about being fathers. And obviously, we're in wildly different spaces in our lives and our achievements. But I said, you know, I wonder if you struggle with this, Shane, is that you know, maybe you didn't come from as easy a circumstances as you're providing for your kids, and that's part of what made you so successful. And then you have kids and you're like, I want to give them everything they want because I love them, et cetera. But I know that comfort doesn't breed excellence. And he goes, and I said, is that something, I think about that all the time. I said, is that something you think about? And he goes, it is the only thing I think about. And he said this really interesting thing about, he's like, I actually have to work to manufacture adversity for my kids because I know without it, there's not going to be that friction that propels them in anything, whether it's surfing or something else. And it sounds like the way that you look at your own surfing and you look at, you know, the positives, the negatives, the things that you have to improve is a way of kind of not manufacturing adversity, but at least looking it sort of soberly in the eyes.
Definitely. I mean, I've lived a very comfortable life. Like, you know, my family, everything has been awesome and it still is. And so, you know, I often think about the greatest surfers in the ocean, and I think about their story, and maybe they've had like family trauma, or you know, they didn't have a father around or whatever, that kind of gave them this drive to be like, I need to prove why I'm so good to the world because there was something missing from my life. And I'd never had that. Like I've always had so much love and care from my family and support that I did have to, basically manufacture those moments. But I do it specifically when I'm in competition. Like it really comes down to like those moments where I'm like, or even in training, you know, I really have to push myself through these moments where it's like, okay, this sucks, but these are the moments you grow the most. Those dark, deep moments, you know, and yeah, I've had some traumatic experiences in my life that have helped me to grow and learn about my character. But I actually, it's more like acting, you know, to show up to a contest, and I'm a pretty happy, easygoing person where I have so much respect and love for everyone. All the girls on tour are so awesome. And I do have to kind of fake a bit of a story in my head that it's similar to like you know how Michael Jordan was in The Last Dance talking about how he just have to make something up. And I totally could, I mean, that resonated with me so much because I had the same, and I still do have that same feeling because I'm competitive. If I just tell myself the right story, then it can kick into gear pretty easy.
It also makes me think of what we were talking about before the break about, you know, the figures that you've existed around that have been in similar atmosphere, whether it's, you know, Lane and her 7 world titles or Lisa and her 4 world titles, Mick and his 3, Kelly and his 11. And it sounds like you have a ton of gas left in the tank to continue to perform, to continue to motivate yourself. But it does seem like whether it's those 4 surfers or other surfers we know, transitioning out of the tour is what you talked about before. You certainly want to make sure you've got your finances in order, but there's also an ego component to that too, where it is, am I going to be okay maybe not getting the same amount of attention or praise not doing this than I do doing this. And I wonder if that's something that you think about, where you go, no, I'm going to be comfortable when I do decide to leave, because I feel very fulfilled. Or no, I've seen other people try to make the transition, and it was not necessarily about financial. It was just about, I didn't get the same amount of attention.
Right. Yeah. It's for sure. I could imagine stepping out of the tour, and you don't have, you're not regularly seeing or hearing about yourself online, or I don't know. I feel like I'm more shy than, I definitely have to work it up a little bit more to kind of be, online and having more of a presence publicly. But so I'm okay with the idea of stepping back, but for sure, I would imagine, already now the focus, like the Stab Surfer of the Year awards, they had they have a collection of the world's best surfers voting on who their favorite surfers were. And I remember looking at a few of the votes from different surfers and being like, oh, damn, I didn't even make the top 5 of so-and-so. Like, they weren't into me. Demoed. Like, I was actually really sad about it. And that was a moment to me where I actually thought about, leading into the retirement process, how that would feel. And it would suck, but it's just the nature of it. Like, you gotta deal with it. And I think
all
we're
because of a stat peer poll. Come on.
Well, no. I ended up winning it in the end, but I just remember.
Fully.
I remember thinking,
that's not your kryptonite. Let's get real. Come on.
No, but it was more just like, looking at these surfers and who they voted for, and I respect them as surfers so much, and being like, it wasn't a bad thing. It just made me think, oh, okay, how would I need to improve my surfing to impress these people? And that takes me right back to when I was 10 years old or 11 years old, learning to surf for the first time. And all I wanted to do was like surf in the shore break, and in the hopes that the people swimming along the shore were like seeing me surf and they were impressed by what I was doing. And it's the same feeling, which is hilarious that it's still there. But anyway, it's all good. But I think, I don't know, it's definitely a process that I'm sure you'll go through at some point. Or maybe I'll just keep going like Kelly and just keep on going.
Well, that's interesting. I do think, everyone's so different, right? And I think people have kind of different chemistries and different approaches to everything, right? And some people have addictive personalities. I would be surprised if you said you had one, but that's possible. But do you think that on the similar topic, do you think that fame is an addiction like anything else?
I don't feel like I'm famous. Like I find that people or fans come up to me and it's like such a, I don't know, they come up to me and they say, hey, so cool to meet you. I love what you do. Have a great day. There's not this like obsessive fan culture that I'm sure Kelly or like rock stars and celebrities have. Like I really feel like I have a really nice,
like a healthy interaction between you and the
healthy
fans,
level of fame that is not overwhelming. I'm sure it's not going to be hard to dissociate with. Like I think that maybe post my career, I will have the same level of fame, for the rest of my life, where it's just like people come up to me and they say, hey, I really enjoy watching you surf. I love what you do. Keep it up. There's not like a crawling at me like, give me photos, give me this, give me that. It's not that at all. And so it's fulfilling, but I could see it being consistently like this for a long time because it's not too over the top. And I don't know. Maybe because I think I hope that people, like the way I give off my ease and my nature is to sort of I want to make people feel good that are around me, that I think fans kind of feel that, and so they give that to me in return.
I was going to say almost the same thing. Like I do think probably the healthy level of interaction you have with most of your fans is based largely with how you are as a person and how you kind of present yourself and express yourself. And you see people take a different approach to that, where the volume on the intensity is turned way up, like in those interactions. And I guess my question wasn't so much like, are you addicted to fame? Because I don't think you are, but just in general for people who reach that, it does seem like people do get addicted to the attention, but you're also probably someone who started developing their career way before, social media kind of took fire as well. So for you, you could probably be like, I could take it or leave it,
I'm not really addicted to fame, but the moments that I am addicted to, and it's something that now that I'm becoming more of a sports fan, like I feel like I was just so focused on surfing in the past, I didn't really pay too much attention to other sports. But now, specifically after winning the finals in such a fashion, like getting a taste of what that grand final finish is like and coming out with the win on top, like doing it in that fashion, gave me this feeling of elation that I hadn't experienced before from a world title. Like to do it in a fashion where it's going to go down on that day. You have to get through the entire field. You have to get through Carissa twice. All of the odds are against you. Can you do it? Like it's all in my hands at that point. And to be able to apply myself and make it happen, it really gave me this sense of like when I watch a grand final of whatever it is, the Premier League grand final, or, it's like if I'm watching, there's not a grand final in Premier League, but if you're watching like the Super Bowl or whatever it is, it's these moments in sport. You're watching the Australian Open tennis final and it's like, two titans against each other and you on the edge of your seat the whole time. That's what I love about sport. And so now I can say I'm fully addicted to that feeling of being in a grand final moment and knowing everything's on the line and can you do it? Like that's what the finals, this new format of the finals gave me. And I'm totally addicted to it. And that's why I want more.
Right. And it's interesting to hear you say that in your own words, because that was kind of the genesis for the redesign as well, where you go, yeah, every event matters. You have to perform across the season to get your ticket here. But what does it feel like to win it in the water against the best surfers of the year, to win the world title coming out of the water, to not be, in a locker room or in a house and someone, loses early. And it is cool to hear you say it felt different, than your other ones. So it's excellent.
It was epic.
We sort of joked a little bit about Surfline and where they're at the moment. As of today, as of recording, which is about a week out from the start of the Mayo Rip Curl Pro Portugal, forecast looks pretty good, knock on every wood I can find, in terms of wind and swell, which would be, if we get kind of a consistent set of waves across the entire event, that'll be a nice change of pace for 2023. Have you been to Super Tubos when it's sort of fired day in and day out? And if so, like how do you kind of rate your chances on at events like that, at that kind of wave?
Yeah, I always struggled with Super Tubos because we've had an event there for a long time, and I swear I could count on one finger the amount of times I've scored great waves in a heat. I think Europe is tough because it's so tidal, and when it pumps for like maybe 2-3 hours and then it switches off. So when you have a full day of competition, it's really hard to sneak a heat in when the waves are pumping. And especially in the wintertime, it gets a lot of swell and it's like a lot of wind and storm and there's a lot going on. But I was speaking to Richard Marsh the other day and he was saying that Frederico, who has been in Portugal this whole winter, he said it's been absolutely firing. He can't believe how good it's been. Like everyone's tired because the waves are just too good. It's been uncrowded. But Francisco Spinola, he also told me that the banks are as good as they get. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I'd love to to be honest, the best feeling in competitive surfing is getting spat out of barrels in front of a crowd on the beach. There really is no better feeling than paddling into a wave. You're going to get barreled, pumping through it and feeling that spray on your back as you come out and you hear the cheers from the beach. So if that can come into fruition at Super Tubos, I'll take it.
I love it. You mentioned your long-standing relationship with Darren Hanley at DHD Surfboards, and this year we're doing the Vizsla CT Shaper rankings. So we're measuring kind of board builder performance across the year, and we're combining the men's and women's results from the quarterfinals or better. And he's currently ranked third, in large part due to your performances at Sunset Beach, you and Molly Picklum's. But he's doing well, and that does feel like one of the longer standing relationships between, world-class surfers and world-class shapers that we see in surfing. And you haven't kind of gone off to other shapers or come back. It's sort of been a constant relationship, even if you've maybe ridden other craft in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Darren shaped my first custom boards for me when I was 13 years old. And we've been together ever since. So, there's something special about our relationship where Darren he's like the cool uncle who will, take you out and you can get mischievous together and, have fun adventures and then he shapes great boards on the side. I'm really lucky that I get to ride off the back of both Mick Fanning and Ethan Ewing. They obviously fine-tune their crafts down to, everything. And I can kind of learn a lot from them. I would say that I'm Darren's easiest team rider because I probably order the least amount of boards. And, I find one that works good and then I just use it the whole year round. But yeah, I love working with Darren. He's great. And he's also not fussed with, more recently, I've been able to ride some Ryan Birch boards and some Alex Lopez shapes, and I just love to experiment with different crafts. And I think that it's important for surfers to do that. You may find something new in a weird craft that you can actually add back into your shortboards, and they might add something cool. But yeah, I think that I'm super lucky that Darren is he's an absolute legend, if anything. That's actually more important to me. What I was wondering though is say in Hawaii, what happens if the surfers are riding, I was riding a Tokoro, and I know I saw a lot of the guys riding Pangs, that their normal shapers are Sharp Eye. So What happens there in the rankings? Or who gets the points?
Yeah. So it's the board which the surfer won their last heat, and we're only counting quarterfinals or better. So if you were riding Shaper X in the round of 16 and you switch to Shaper Y in the quarterfinals and lose, Shaper X gets those points, not Shaper Y. But we did spend a ton of time talking, because that was the number one question that came up when we were talking to the shapers.
I mean, Hawaii's the only place that really happens.
It was, but what was interesting is, and I do think this has to do with just the tricky forecast we had this year, was that so many surfers were riding, Pangs and Arakawas and Tokoros, and I was poring over the photos and making talking to Strider and be can you check what logos that board got? Pete Mel. But they didn't perform as well as we probably thought they would have, and I think that has to do with the wave conditions and both events. But I do think it's cool because it's part of the conversation with the program that Vizsla's supporting too, where those people probably have been building boards for the world's best surfers forever and ever, but no one's really talked about it because that surfer may be on, endorsement contract Y with the shaping company, and no one really ever talks about it. But it was fun to do during the event because we got to give a lot of the local shapers their credit.
Yeah. And the Hawaiian shapers I got some boards of Arakawa as well. And it's a different world shaping for those types of waves. And so it's on
that note too, looking ahead, do you think that you would use those boards at I'm making it up, Margaret River or Tahiti? Do you think that that's got a chance for you?
Definitely Tahiti, not so much Margaret River. I got my Darren Hanley's work really well in pretty much every location. But there's something different about Hawaii and Tahiti. There's just a little more ocean that seems to be folding on top of you. And so, I actually packed all my Arakawas and I've sent them back to Australia. So they'll be there for, if I make the cut and I make it to Tahiti, then I'll definitely take them there. I saw Kanoa and a bunch of those Arakawas there last year, and he had an excellent result. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works.
I love it. Well, before you go, we did put out some questions to the folks that follow us at the Lineup Pod on Instagram. First question is from @chris.fowler.187, who asks, do you think your greatest enjoyment in surfing is still ahead of you?
Great question. I do. I think that on tour, we may sacrifice a bit of, adventure time in searching for waves or doing trips to chase swells and stuff. And that's because, the tour it takes up a lot of time. But I can see in the future that I really want to surf great waves and capture them on film and I mean, I don't know, that's tough. I've had so many great moments already, but but I think that's what's so cool about surfing. You never really know what the next day could bring. And it's what's that Jerry Lopez quote? You should only surf enough so that you can surf again tomorrow. Never
Smart.
surf. What is it? Never surf too much that you can't surf again tomorrow. It's like, where surfers are continuously looking for that next great feeling. So I think it's still more to come.
Last question we have from the Instagram community, I'm just going to find it here, is from @shapeshiftersmag, who asks, excluding yourself and Carissa Moore and Tyler Wright, which of the women, whether on tour or off tour, do you think is next to win a world title?
I think Carissa is next to win a world title, yeah.
Excluding Carissa, sorry.
Excluding Carissa.
Not counting
sorry,
yourself,
sorry.
Tyler, or Carissa.
Sorry. Okay, I would... that's a good question.
There's no safe space on this question because you got to make a shot.
I think if it's at lowers, I think Tatiana. I really think Tatiana would be next to do that. Her backhand is super strong. She's a smart competitor and she's had a taste of it. She was so close to winning it in the past, and we're probably due for a Goofy Foot world champ sometime soon.
We always are. We're always due for a Goofy Foot world champ. Well, thanks to everyone who wrote in at the Lineup Pod. We are now down to our final segment. It's time for the lightning round. These are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. I do have your answers from several years ago, so I can back you up on if you've changed or not. First question. If you could only have one board set up for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
Oh my goodness. Thruster.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Burrito or pizza?
Pizza.
All right, you're 2 for 3 on same answers the last time.
I've evolved.
Or, well, excuse me, 1 for 3. Excuse me. You said twin fin and you said tea last time.
That's
But
because I was trying to seem like a healthy alternative.
Yeah. We just had
hipster,
too many drinks the night before, and we're like, no, my new life is Dave Rostovich. It's gonna be great. Yeah, exactly. Yes, someone get me a tea. Last book you read. If this is the same answer, we're gonna have to talk.
Last book I read, The Courage to be Disliked. Was that the same book? I hope not.
No. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
That'd be a while. No, you're good. Best surf film ever.
Best surf film ever. Oh my goodness. I'm going to say the film that me and my friends just made. It's called Surfing.
I like it. I like the choice. Is it? We can watch it now. It's out streaming?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Check it out.
Perfect.
You have to type in surfing, but then put in my name, Nikki Van Dyke, Macy Callahan, Dimity. Yeah, it's a little harder to find.
It does feel like there's here are 17 trillion results. And you're like, what am I looking for?
Yeah, that's totally part of our plan.
It worked. One wave you never have to go back to.
Ooh. I never have to go back to. Damn. I was about to say 3 different ones, and I thought about all the people that would hate me for saying that.
That's okay. I'm going to give you an out because not everyone likes to answer this one for that exact reason. The fact that you have 3 that's good enough for me.
Yeah, okay. I'm really not a huge fan of, Rottnest Island. I don't need to go back there.
Okay, fair. Totally fair. If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life.
Oh my goodness. Pipeline.
That was what you said last time. Best person to share a lineup with?
Any goofy footer works for me. But yeah.
It's good. Worst person to share a lineup with?
Worst person would be Italo. He's takes everything and he's incredibly fast at paddling back out, getting another one.
You gave the same reason last time, but you said Kelly, so that's interesting.
Okay.
Italo is that makes sense. Sense. You're not the first person to say
Kelly's
Italo.
chilled out.
Machine. Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. Last one. Okay, finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by.
Flying business class to Europe.
Hey, now we're talking. That's the achievements unlocked. Steph Gilmore, thank you so much. Congratulations on everything, on your 8 world titles, on your dozens of championship tour wins, on just being an awesome person inside and outside of surfing. Look forward to watching you at the Maya Rip Curl Pro Portugal and at all the events this season, including the ones post-relegation. Good luck, and thank you so much for coming back on the lineup.
Thank you for having me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope I didn't waffle on too much.
That's all this is just waffling.
Thanks, Dave.